Yes. As Poju has already introduced me, I am James Koske, the Dean, School of Environmental Studies, which has a number of departments, including Department of Environmental Sciences and Education, Environmental Planning and Management, and Community Development. I live in Kenya. I come from Kenya, and Kenya, I think most of you know, has the equator straddling or going through it. And it doesn't mean that we don't have snow. Snow is often associated with cold countries. But the first visitors from outside our country were marveled when they found snow-capped mountains, particularly Mount Kenya and the neighboring country, Tanzania. We can go to the second slide. Second slide, kindly, yes. As I said, Kenya is expected then to experience equatorial climate, but one that is modified from the equatorial climate because of altitude. Altitude in Kenya varies from sea level of to over 5,000 meters. Where I live traditionally and where tea is grown is well into the 2,000, 3,000 meters above sea level. So we can actually say quite a number of areas in Kenya have mountains, and because of quite a number of cultural groups within our country, every one of them seems to own a kind of highland or a mountain. Mount Kilimanjaro, which is similarly snow-capped most of the year, is in the boundary between Kenya and Tanzania. Next slide. I intended to show you in the next slide, page 3, areas in Kenya that have exceptionally high grounds. Although the equator passes through the country, and the Great Rift Valley also transverses the country from north to south. We are in slide number 3. We have a number of mountains and highlands that are cascaded throughout the country. Or the Great Rift Valley passes through the middle, as I said, and to the western part of Kenya, near the boundary of Uganda and Kenya, is one famous mountain called Mount Elgon, and a number of mountain ranges cascade throughout, punctuated by the Aberdare ranges across the Great Rift Valley towards the center of Kenya. And in the middle, as it were, on Kenya, very close to the equator, is Mount Kenya, the famous Mount Kenya. Mount Kenya is snow-capped, although, sorry? Yeah, Mount Kenya, which is in the approximately on the equator, and not many people would expect snow, near the equator on land, but that is how it is. Then towards the south, we have the Taita Hills, and very close by is Mount Kilimanjaro. These areas often although behaving or providing nice picturesque pictures, very nice sceneries and so on. In fact, they become important tourist attractions in part of our country, together with the number of national parks that house the natural wild animals and forests. So quite a number of these mountain areas have been closed off, particularly at the foot towards the base, to form the national parks, where we have national parks that national parks that have quite a number of animals. Amboseli National Park, that is very close to Mount Kilimanjaro, is famous for elephants, and nearby the Masai Mara National Park, which houses the 5 important large mammals, including the lions and leopards, cheetahs, giraffes, and so on. All these animals are within the parks that surround the mountains. And so recently we have done research to find out the extent of climate impacts on some of these mountain ecosystems. And indeed, as history attests, the snow lines both in Mount Kilimanjaro and Mount Kenya have somehow receded. They have somehow receded, and thereby showing that there are quite a number of issues related to rise in temperature. Now, more importantly, the highland areas are areas for resources of quite a number of communities. And in particular, I would like to mention the Chiarangana Hills. The Chiarangana Hills are home for a specific group of culture in Kenya called the Sengwer. And Sengwer have lived in these highlands, which are above around 3,000 meters above sea level, 2,000 to 3,000 meters. And they survive by harvesting resources, all sorts of resources, ranging from food to building material to medicine. And right now we have one candidate in our school that is carrying out research on the indigenous knowledge about mountain resources, which are utilized by this cultural group. There are other important cultural groups. For us, the Chiarangana Hills, one called the Pokot. The Pokot area is semi-arid, but the highlands have altered the climate so that at the peaks of some of these climates, one particular area called Seger is unique in terms of climatic conditions, and this group utilizes that area, which is cold and often has abundant rainfall for agricultural purposes. Although the area below that is semi-arid, this is a very unique area. Now, to look at the impacts of COVID-19 on these mountain resources, I have mentioned tourism and travel restrictions in Kenya. We are on slide 9. Travel restrictions in Kenya has meant that there have been fewer tourists, leading to low revenue generation. And this has affected people around mountains, particularly the Mount Kenya National Park, Mount Elgon National Park, and on the slopes of Mount Kilimanjaro. The restrictions on local travel and the curfews that were instituted as a result of trying to control the COVID-19 has impacted the local communities adjacent to these mountain slopes and on the foothills. The mountain slopes and foothills, as I said, people extract important resources for their own livelihoods, including honey, firewood, grazing, and farming. More importantly, for cultural purposes, there are instances where communities visit certain sites up the mountain for worship and for spiritual inspiration, particularly Mount Kenya and the groups that live around there. So I think these are areas that perhaps have lately been impacted by the COVID-19, and we shall set up maybe post-impact studies on some of these areas. Otherwise, I'd like to thank Buju for inviting me to this wonderful session. And I'm glad to be in this session, and we will collaborate more in future. Thank you so much. Thank you very much.